Hi, it's Bear Gardner. I'm back with another cards-focused video and a whole new series, potentially, depending on how people feel about them. So I talk about this occasionally on stream and in other places, the concept of tactical methodology and game theory and how it applies to card games and experience. So I figured I'm going to do some quick videos on different tactical ideas and concepts. The disclaimer with this one is this level of nuance and detail in a card game is something that you're making a personal choice about. You don't have to do this to enjoy the game. You really don't. You can play the game without getting too noodly about deep and complex tactics and reasoning behind it. But I personally have found over the years that it's improved my game massively, and it certainly helped when I was competing in other games to have an understanding of foundational values and how they apply to any form of tactical or heads-up game, which we're going to define as a conflict for the purposes of game theory. So we're going to have a look at a concept and go through what it actually means. So I'm going to switch over here. So this is a quote actually from a challenge piece that I did many years ago. I can't actually remember who did it, but anyway, we were asked to distill down certain concepts of game theory, which is the practice of understanding conflict and direct conflict and resolution. And one of the things that I did was I diluted down a specific concept, which is the concept of clarity of thinking. So this is the quote, and then I'll go into what the heck this actually means. So, consideration of uncontrollable matters dilutes the art of strategy. A strategist must confine their thinking to what is. That which might or should be is a matter for philosophers. Right, it's tremendously pretentious. So sue me, I was educated a certain way. It's the way I write, at least for things like this. But I admit that it can come across as quite pretentious, but the language is chosen with a reason. So, also bear in mind I was reading a lot of Sun Tzu and Machiavelli and other things at the time. But anyway, what does this actually mean? So, consideration of uncontrollable matters dilutes the art of strategy. What the hell is an uncontrollable matter there? So, what I mean by this is in game, there are things we can control and things we cannot. We have control over the cards we have in hand, the credits we're going to spend, the activation and movement of units and orders and effects that are under our control in a game of cards. We do not have direct control over draw, over our opponent's hand, our opponent's board position, or our opponent's choice of use of board position and cards in hand. Next part, strategists must confine their thinking to what is. This is about not wasting processing time on things you can't do anything about, which leads to that which might or should be is a matter for philosophers. So, in-game, quite often, you will come across situations where you have an undesirable hand or a difficult board position, or your opponent is high rolling or appears to just be drawing really well, and there are factors, that uncontrollable factors, that are present. However, when we look at this from a game theory perspective, we have a limited time in which to take our turn. There is a clock, it is ticking. We must use that clock. So, when we use that, we have a specific resource that we are expending in planning and executing our turn. Time. The time we have allocated to take our turn. Every second that we spend ruminating or considering something that we have no control over is time we don't have to discern and take a proactive or effective course of action. So in certain formats, particularly if you get to the military application of game theory, this comes down to pressure thinking and combat awareness. If you are under pressure and you have a limit on the time, you must react in a certain space of time, otherwise something bad will happen. In this case, our opponent will have the advantage. In actual conflict, you might get shot and die, so let's keep that in context. But the principles are still applicable. You must therefore do your very best to remove all non-relevant thoughts and emotional responses from your mind, because they are eating runtime in your brain that could be used to actually take and plan a turn. So, for example, spending time being upset about the fact that we drew the wrong card at the wrong time, or our opponent forced us to discard a card that we really like, and also being, oh god, that happened, that's so annoying, and then even taking the time to send an emote going, may seem like something that comes quite naturally, and of course it is, we're human. However, every second you spend doing that is time you're not spending working out how to resolve the issue that's actually in front of you. The same is true of being frustrated at repeated bad draws or repeated good draws from your opponent, or your opponent having played a particularly good turn. These are things which will happen, but you have no control over. This is where we get to the last sentence, that which might or should be, that is to say, I could have drawn this, or my opponent shouldn't have done that, or my opponent shouldn't be able to do that, or that card's overpowered. God, I can't believe they're dropping another Glamour Boys. These are unhelpful uses of our time because we have no control over them. They're completely irrelevant. Every second spent on them is wasted because there's nothing we can do to change them. We can come back to them after the game and submit points on things that we might like changing or find a space to vent. But in the game, I encourage players who want to improve their game to discipline their thinking. Focus on that which is. Back to sentence 2. A strategist must confine their thinking to that, to what is, or that which is. What is what's in front of you. Soldiers refer to this as doing the job in front of you. Actual statement, you just have to deal with what's in front of you. There's no point thinking about anything else. So, all of this leads us back to the original sentence. You see what I'm doing here? Consideration of uncontrollable matters dilutes the art of strategy. The more time we spend thinking about stuff we can't control, the more excess fluid we're pouring into the pool of useful time application, the more we are diluting our strategy. If, however, we focus our mind on what's in front of us and try and find the optimal play from the position we are in, we put ourselves in the best position to potentially change a game, win a game, or at the very least play a game out well. Another thing that I'm sure I'll come back to at some point is the concept of winning and losing is much less important than optimal and suboptimal play, but this has gone on quite long enough. The point is, this mantra can be tremendously useful. Understanding the time and the place for emotional responses, consideration, thinking, and venting, versus the time and the place for managing the resource that you have available, which is time to think and calculate the best play, will improve your game. As ever, I hope you find this useful. I hope this is something that actually ends up having value for you. I hope you continue to enjoy cards. All my thoughts, take them or leave them. As always, be good humans and stay well. And I will, I'm sure, be back with more in the future.